Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transform Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Sarah Mitchell, who today will be continuing our discussion on the Transform Programming Language, also known as TPL. We're also here to answer any questions you may have, so you can go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, or you can submit them to us via email at tfservice, as in transform service, at alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. I believe today's subject is on functions. So Sarah, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can. So let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Today, we are indeed talking about functions. This is part 5 of our many-parted Transform Programming Language series. And today is going to be an easy one. We're going to talk about functions. Specifically, we're going to talk about user-defined functions, functions you can create for yourself. So a little bit about functions. If you don't know what a function is, it's basically a script, a snippet of code that you can use over and over and over again by giving it a name and then calling it. Functions, TPL functions that you create can be used in a lot of places. They can be used in events, which we've talked a little bit about with our buttons and our controls. When we were looking in the TPL code editor, there's some things in there where you can add code. But your functions can also be used in the if conditions you write for if-else statements in your forms. You can include them in TPL blocks, which can be added to HTML elements. And you can also call functions from other functions. And one of the major use cases that I'm going to talk about today is calculated fields for functions, and you will quickly understand why when we get into that. As far as creating functions, they're created using the function end function statement, and all user-defined function names must be prefixed with the @ symbol. So on this next slide, I've got an example of making a function here. This function is called hello. The syntax here, it's function @hello. Between the function and the end function is all of the code you want to execute. This is this function calls the MSG show basic, which shows a basic pop-up inside your form, and it will have the title greeting, and the body of it will say hello. And if I wanted to call this function, this right here below is the syntax you would use to execute that function to show the message. Functions can take arguments. This is the same hello function that we saw before, but it takes an argument called, it's the name, basically, hello name is how this gets used in here. So you can, when you have arguments in your functions, the only way you can access them is using this args function here, which is a built-in function. Big key difference here, our built-in functions don't start with an @ your functions do, and that's a key difference. Anyway, if I wanted to pass in the name Paddington here and display a greeting that said hello Paddington, I would say args1 and assign that into a value here. I called it name, and then I built my message here using the ampersand, which is concatenates two strings together, and then this would display the message. In addition to passing in data, you can get data back, and that is done using the return statement. So here we have a function called sum. It takes two values, it adds them together, and it returns the total. And down here is an example how I would call that. If I passed in 5 and 10, it would add 5 to 10, the total would be 15, and then it would assign that into result down here. So that's the basics. We are now going to just go and take a look at all this stuff live because as this, one of my favorite things, you don't really learn programming until you actually really do it. And I love the You'll Really books, so let's just get into it. So I've got Alpha Transform here open. And if I go into the designer here, I've got a form I've already built that demonstrates everything we just talked about. It's called functions. And before we dig into how this form was built, just want to give you a demo of how it works. So if you give me a moment here, need to get screen sharing working again. And there we go. Let's make that big so it fills the whole screen here. So I've made this form called functions.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, it's got 4 little demos. It's got our basic function, which is going to display that message that we looked at earlier. I've got an example that uses arguments and return values, one that shows you how to use it, an if condition, and then an HTML field. So if we take a look at basic function, all this is a button. And when I tap the button, it displays a message. It says greetings as the title, and hello is the message. So if we take a look at the next example, this one's a little more complicated. What I've got in here is I've got 2 fields, and I've got a third one called total. And what this does is if I change the value for value 1 or value 2, it's gonna update the total. It's gonna compute it. So take a look here. Let's put in some numbers. So we'll do 5 for value 1, and tap the arrow to go to the next one, and then 82, and tap done. You see down here it says 87 in my total field. If I go back and change any of these, maybe I make this one 4, tap done, now it's 9, change the 5 to like 900, 990, 993, and then we get 997. So this this total is a calculated field. I'm gonna pause right here and we're gonna take a look at that one. So if you remember from some of our previous episodes, you edit custom code in your form is where you can add all your TPL. If this button is not enabled for you, you need to change the radio group up here to yes. If you can't see any of these settings, then you need to expand advanced features to get there. So quickly, we'll just take a quick look at that button. Button calls a function called hello. If you give me a moment here. Hold on. There we go. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So this button, I'm going to back up a bit. It calls this function called hello. And the way I created that is I went to blocks in the TPL editor and I clicked add function. And it gave me a function definition, and I'll show you what that looks like real quick. The add function creates a new function by just putting the code over here that you need to get started. You want to replace unnamed function here with the name of your function. And this looks like it's wrapping, but it isn't. That's a comment. So that's all on its own line. You can keep this if you want, you can get rid of it. But the key here is to just replace this text with the name of your function. And then between the function and end function statements where you want to add your code. So if we take a look at hello, that's my function name. And here's the code that gets executed when you run it. So that's our button event. Now that second example, the arguments and returns, we had value 1, we had value 2, and we had total. And the way this works is I've added code to both of the changed events for value 1 and value 2. And what they do is they call the sum function, pass in the value of the 2 fields, value 1 and value 2, and whatever gets returned is assigned to the total field. And if we go take a look at this sum function over in blocks, this is what it does. It gets the 2 arguments, it adds them together, and returns the total. So for calculated fields and transform, this is how you need to do it. You need to put code in your changed event for whatever fields you want to calculate the value from to set the value in your calculated field. And functions are very useful in that case because odds are you're probably doing the same calculation in both cases. So it's easier to manage that calculation in one spot than it is to have duplicated all of this code in both places. Because if something changes, then you have to change it in both locations, and that's easier when you put it into a function, which is one of the really powerful things you can do with these. So that's how we built the calculated field for total. One other thing I did too is if you just click on these fields, you get this bonus properties. And in here, I wrote the word true, but I think I just needed to put like the value 1. You can add like a calculated read-only test to just make sure that that's never editable by the user. So that's arguments and returns. Let's go back to our example. This next one is an if condition. So if we cancel out of here, I don't want to save my changes. And we go back and we look at our form definition, go into edit form commands. I have this if statement down here. And this if statement is calling this is_y function that I've created. And it's passing the value of show colors, which is this button list up here. It's got 2 items in it, yes and no. And if it's yes, it has a value of y, and if it's no, it has a value of n. So if this test evaluates to true, or the value 1, then the if condition will display all of its contents, which is this HTML block I've created. If it's not true, then if it's blank, if it's false, then it won't show it. So if we go and we look at this is_y, which takes 1 argument. It's over here in these blocks. Let's look at our function here. Here we're getting our argument value. And we're simply just comparing the value to a capital letter Y and returning that. And if we go look at our form, if I tap no, nothing happens. If I tap yes, it displays my content. And that's done with a function. Now that's a really basic function example, but what you can do in here, if you've got complicated things you want to test, maybe you need to look at a few field values or perform some calculation, putting that into a function and calling that function in your if test is a bit easier to manage than trying to write that all out here in this tiny box. So that's a place where functions can be very helpful. The other nice thing too is you can actually string these together with other functions using the logical operators, which are documented in the documentation. So that's a place where you can use your function here in this if test. And then the final case I want to show is this HTML. You can execute TPL inside of an HTML text definition here by putting curly braces in and then typing in your TPL. And this here is a function I made that basically runs a unit test. It tests my is_y function and then returns the results as an HTML box that gets printed in here. And if we go take a look at that here in edit custom code over in blocks and run tests, this is what it does. Can I make that bigger? I cannot, but I can do this. I just don't want the text to wrap because it gives this false impression that it's on multiple lines. So this is what this function does, run tests. It creates this HTML variable and sets it, first puts h1 element in it, and then I concatenate on h2 with a header. This is telling me what function I'm testing. And then I have these 3 tests. And all they do is they call the isY function with a few values, a capital Y, lowercase y, the letter n, and in each of these if-else conditions, I have expected messages. So I expect isY to succeed if I give it a capital or a lowercase y. And if it doesn't succeed, if it doesn't come back with true, that's not correct. So I'm going to print out this message that I expected a true value, but I got false. And then similar for isY with an n, I expect this to fail. So in the else condition, which is false, it's not y. That's where I add my pass to the HTML object. But if it comes back as true, that's also not correct. So then I would print out this failure message. And if we go back and we take a look at that in operation, this is what I get. I actually did deliberately write isY to fail on the lowercase y part, just so you could see how this would work in the case where something was wrong. So this one passed, this one failed. This one did passed as well. I really like writing unit tests for all of my TPL stuff. So knowing that that failed, what I wanted to show you is why I used a triple equals here, which is a case sensitive comparison. If I change this back to a double equals, or change it to a double equals, upload my form, go back into forms here, refresh my definitions, go back and run this again, they now all pass. So these are all some ways you can use your functions. How you set them up is with that ampersand definition here. You have to start them with an ampersand. You can use add function to add them. You can use them in a lot of places. And you're not really limited. Limitations on what you put in your functions are the same limitations that you have in your events. Some of these functions available in Transform's function library cannot be used in certain contexts. So those would propagate to your functions wherever you use them. But that's just the basics of functions in TPL, and I'm not going to ask if there are any questions.
Excellent. Yeah, a couple of questions on functions and one sort of general question. Let's start with the general one, which was that you used the ampersand in the section header, but it didn't translate correctly in the actual app. Do you know, is there a way to overcome that? I'm not sure that there is. Maybe we don't use ampersands.
I was going to log a bug report about that when I saw
Okay.
it. And I
the
did
way to overcome that is you let our developers fix that for you. So
I'll
you
let
can
our
use
developers.
ampersands.
Yeah. I didn't even
we'll
notice
take care
that
of
until just now.
Yeah. The other two have to do with functions. The first is that you showed how to pass in multiple arguments, but could you go over that again? And so, like, if you were going to pass in 3 arguments, how would you? Is it just the order in which they're passed that indicates?
Yes,
1,
it
2,
is.
and 3?
Yeah. So the
Okay.
order that they are, and we can let's add another function here. Many args.
It's like a pirate thing.
Yep. Well, let's writing TPL on the fly is dangerous for me.
Oh, that's right.
args 1, var 2, 2. It says however many you've added, it's just in order.
And it's in the order in which they've been placed in the function call.
Yep.
Yeah.
And because let's just call it many args. Let's add a unit test for this. And then we'll say HTML equals HTML ampersand args1. I've created too
You
much
created
writing
a
for
monster. Why don't we
myself.
start with 3 of them?
Let's just go up to args3 here.
Yeah.
Args3, or yeah, var3. You know what? And let's just do this. It's not that hard for me actually to finish. I'm gonna end up doing it.
All right.
Sorry. uh, get a very extreme example here. And then we'll go down to run tests. Well, you know what? Let's do it this way. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Yeah.
Save that. And we'll save that and we'll upload it real quick.
Now I noticed that you were still using the form when you updated the form definition. It looks like you can do that. That's handy.
Yeah.
You don't have to start a whole new form or anything just because you've updated the definition.
No, you don't. So now if we go in, if I didn't break it, incomplete expression, I totally broke it. Let's go figure out what I didn't do right. Look at mini args. 5.
Oh, that's a
There
question.
it
Do you
is.
have to? Oh, there it is. Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
And do you
What
have
was
to
your
supply all
question?
the arguments? Like if you had 5 arguments, could you supply just the first 2? Or will it be like, no, I needed all 5, so forget it?
I think in that case it might just give you nothing back if there's nothing to get. We'll go take a look at the function.
Yeah. Okay.
I just realized you can't see my phone here.
Nope.
There we go.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I forgot the colons and the spaces, but there's 4 and 5 at the end there.
That's the order. Super.
Yeah.
All right. So
And if
one
you went in
last
there
question.
and changed that up, it would be different, but it's going to be in the order that you define them.
Uh-huh.
And if we go in here, if you look over here in this functions list on the right, there are I don't remember what section we've lumped that into.
Yeah, it's right up there. All built-in functions. If you
Oh,
move
here
it
we go.
down to yeah.
It's args. It's an execution function. If I expand this, it just tells you returns the argument. There is a special one called arg0. It just returns the name of the function.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's the order. So 1 is the first argument, 2 is the second argument.
Terrific. So we only have a little bit of time left, but just another question. We can pass in multiple things into an argument. Can you get out more than one answer from an argument?
From a function,
From a function, sorry.
so
Is
you
what I
can
meant to
only
say.
return one value, but that
Uh-huh.
value can be an object, and objects can have multiple
And they
properties.
can
So
have
if you need
multiple.
to return more than one value,
Mhm.
you can
So,
use an
so my
object. You can also use an
example,
array.
yeah. So like if I gave it an address and I wanted to get back a lat long or something like that,
Right.
two
Yeah,
different latitude and longitude is 2 different values. I could get that back as an object with one
correct.
property of the object being
Yeah. And if you go and you read this section on functions, we actually show that here.
fantastic.
You know, here it is. You make an object, you set A, you set B, you return the object, and then down here you can reference it.
Excellent.
You called your function.
And for more information on objects and arrays, tune into last week's Transform Tuesday, where you handled it there, or week before last,
Yeah,
but it is up on YouTube at this point,
it
I
is up
believe.
on YouTube. I can
Yep.
also let me quickly while you find the next question.
That's it for questions. So
Okay.
it's all on you.
Include this link here in the chat for everyone. That
Great.
all that information you saw in that the TPL editor is also documented here. Is that functions, you could even like copy it here. It's a little easier to select the stuff.
Mhm.
And then all of our built-in functions are listed in here too,
Yep.
including args. And there's also another one
Excellent.
called arglen, which tells you how many arguments you've been given.
Oh, okay. Cool. Excellent. Well, Sarah, thank you very much for presenting. I'd like to thank everyone who showed up today. If you have any more questions, go ahead and send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. We hope you have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday. Take care and stay well. Bye-bye.